Okay, so I'm back, and I wanted to talk about Davy Jones because I've been meaning to do this for a while. So back when, of course, I'm a huge Beatles fan, as you know, like a third gen or something, and then also a Monkees fan, and the Monkees were like the more accessible TV version of the Beatles. But even the members of the Beatles said that they loved the Monkees. The Monkees were hilarious. They started a show. What happened was, I believe it was MTV or VH1 or somebody began to show episodes of the Monkees in the 80s, right? And then after that, they started to show just on our local channels, just like they would show reruns of Gilligan's Island and I Love Lucy and all those things. And so I got to watch the Monkees as like a third gen or something like that. And we loved it. We laughed so hard. My favorite character was, I had a crush on Michael. But even though we all loved, like Mickey Dolenz was so cute and Davy Jones was adorable, the little stars in his eyes, and I mean they were supposed to be like the Beatles, right? Davy was probably supposed to be like Paul, and Mickey was supposed to probably be like a mix of all the Beatles. I mean, to me, I guess he would be like Ringo and even played the drums, but he was funnier. Like he had more sass and humor, like John and Paul mixed, and and George. But anyway, you get the point. They were supposed to be like the Beatles, but Mike was very serious, and he was the writer, and and he was tall and dark and moody and probably a little, like I've talked about, I think he was a little autistic. But anyway, and we all loved Peter. Peter was the one, he was like the lapdog of everyone. He was so cute and funny and sweet, and he was the one, I feel like, in the Monkees that every episode was about, because I don't know how many times the antagonist would come and take Peter away or hypnotize Peter, and they had to go save Peter. But after that long explanation, the thing is, Mike was my favorite. And I loved their songs. I would babysit, and the people I babysat for had Monkees records, and like the Mamas and the Papas and the Beatles and all that. And I remember listening to the Monkees records, and I loved Mike Nesmith and the most. I was firm on that. I loved Mike. Mike was my monkey. And I wasn't really into the Beatles at that time in high school. As a third gen, I was into more like the Monkees and stuff like that. Anyway, when Peter Tork died, I was on my spiritual journey. It was winter time. He died in like January, February 2019 or something like that. I think it was 2019. And I remember thinking that I was really sad and really in tune with him for some weird reason. And so I was taking my dog for a walk. Snow was on the ground. It had been snowing all winter. It was like, hadn't seen dirt for months. And taking my dog for a walk, thick snow, and all of a sudden, for no reason, I just thought, Peter Tork, are you with me? And I heard psychically, not in my ear, but psychically, I heard, yes, I'm right here. I thought, that's so strong. Am I crazy? Why was that so strong? And on that walk and walks afterwards, I would have these long conversations with Peter Tork. It went on into springtime and then into summer, and then my mother died and all these things happened, and I just would have this deep connection with Peter Tork. And then it got to the point where I was like, okay, Peter, I have to let you go a little bit, because I just need to move on with some other things. But I just deeply love Peter Tork, like a friend, like a deep friend. And he said something like, I'm afraid. And I said, what are you afraid of? And he said that everyone will forget me, that I'll just really be dead then. And I said, but you're not dead. You're more alive than the rest of us. And that's when I realized that in the afterlife, on the other side, that people really are more alive than us. And I said, Peter, you should see what I see about you, that you're like the symbol for the Pink Floyd with the prism. I said, you're like the universe and all these beautiful colors and rainbows, and you're more alive than me. And that's when I felt that he was able to sort of let go and accept his death. And I think that he was learning, I don't know why me. I still ask why me. Of course, I've always been connected to John Lennon. That's the thing. Like, I had all these things, technically, well, whatever. I'm not going to go into the whole John thing. But that's really, my thing with John really developed. And I think Peter helped me. And I helped Peter. After his death, I helped him on the other side and helped him sort of transfer and go to the other side and accept his death. Because he'd been through all this cancer and well, anyway, but Davy was dead. Davy had died of heart failure years before, and it was on one of those walks when I was talking to Peter, and then I was like, well, let's pull in Davy. So I pulled in Davy, and they were just like Peter and Davy were sitting together. So on my psychic brain, and they were like, I could see them, and I even know where I was in the park on the path. In that one moment when I saw psychically in my brain Davy Jones and Peter Tork sitting together, and then I asked them about John, and I said, what do you think about John Lennon on the other side, because I was still asking a lot of questions about John. And they said, we're not like, they were like the what is it, the Wayne's World, we're not worthy, and he's too bright, John's too bright. And it was like almost like John was a holy figure, but not really. They said not really. And God, this is so hard to talk about because it means so much to me, and it's just still so thick in my brain. But I did this whole deep dive on the Monkees and Davy and Peter and everyone, and this is before Mike Nesmith passed away. Anyway, the whole thing about the Monkees was the Monkees were very relevant. The Monkees were a band. They were a true band. I know that was like some contention of were the Monkees a real band. They were. Peter was a very gifted musician. Davy was a gifted dancer and singer and performer. And what Davy showed me was that he was like this star, like this literal, I know they put stars in his eyes on the show, that he literally was like a star. And that, if you look at his birth chart, which I haven't looked at in a long time, I think he was a Pisces, because Davy was Peter was the Aquarius, and it was like Pisces, Capricorn. No, I bet Davy was Capricorn. I bet you. Well, anyway, but I bet he had Leo. I bet you he had Leo in his chart. He was a star. He was like born to perform. And Davy was just this natural. Like, he was born to be a natural performer. And he said the thing about the Monkees were that the Monkees came around at the time of Vietnam, and they made everyone laugh. And it was a time when, like, the Beatles made people laugh too, but they also made people change a lot. The Beatles were there to help people change their minds and to expand, and like the whole revolution thing of evolving, revolution, evolution. And the Monkees were there with the same purpose, almost like a parallel purpose, but also to make people laugh at a time when boys, your best friend, your brother, your uncle, your teacher, your father were going off to Vietnam and coming home in a body bag across America in your small town. And it was this great fear of death and lots of death and sadness and grief. And the Monkees were there to help people change in that way, but also to make them laugh and to sing. And so the Monkees were very instrumental in helping the youth and culture and humanity alongside the Beatles. And the fact they made the Beatles laugh. But anyway, and I love their songs. I love the Monkees. I love their music. They just weren't more like classically gifted and like masterpieces of writing. They were more like the gift of the masterpiece of the package of it being the great music and great and making people laugh and making people come together. It was just different. It was like the same thing but different. Anyway, so Davy, he was a jockey. I believe he grew up in Manchester, England, and his mother had died, kind of like Paul. See, has like a lot of mirroring of Paul McCartney. And then his sisters, he had older sisters, and then his dad, I believe, worked in a factory, which is very common in England at that time. And so Davy was sort of left adrift, but he was raised a lot by his sisters. And then he would go and he learned how to dance and sing and all perform all these things. But he also wanted to be a jockey because he was little, and he was going to be a serious jockey. He's very talented at it. However, I guess he was one of those people that was discovered, and he was cast as the little, what do you call it, the little thief in I know there's a name for it, in Oliver with Georgia Brown, and then that toured everywhere. So he had his sort of like internship of performance at a young age, and also how to like romance women and use his good looks in a way to get him through and get success. And so, you know, he showed me that he was like John Stamos. Like, he said that John Stamos had a lot of that same and I say had because John Stamos is going through a lot of, like, he's in his ego a lot for entertainment purpose only. Davy didn't really have that. Davy did have some issues, but he was more of like a really honest, down-to-earth guy. And he didn't have any big pretensions about himself. And he felt like he had a lot of changes in his life, you know, from the child, from an orphan in a way, to then like a jockey, and then like a star on stage, and then like a big star with the Monkees, and then after that he had like a huge recording and albums, and then he got through this, and he was a father, he was a young father, husband, and he just had a lot of changes. And then he went into the older age of, like with the Monkees, the middle age, which was a really great era for them, and they again brought a lot of humor and joy to people, and brought people back to, and reminded people of the 60s that hadn't died. So Davy was like this huge agent of transformation, of showing how you can keep going, of adapting, learning how to evolve and adapt and roll with the changes. And he said, but it was serious. He said it was serious what we did. We made people laugh, but we were very serious about it, very serious. And we were seriously talented, but we also knew how to take the mickey out of ourselves and laugh about it and say, well, you know, this doesn't really mean anything, and we're not big stars, we're not big stars. And to them, they were just, yeah, they would say things like, but we're not really a real band, we're not real, but they were. But they would say that to keep humble and not get big heads. And he said through the whole thing, he never let himself get a big head. How did he know how to dance so well? Davy Jones, how did you know how to dance so well? He learned it with his sisters. He learned it at, I believe it was the church or a school. It was like an after-school thing, step by step. He learned it walking around the streets of Manchester. He learned it quickly. He just had the ability. He just had a really good ability. Again, there's that ability to learn to adapt and change. And he just had a really great ability to learn how to quickly adapt and survive. And so dancing was just one of those things that he just had that quick ability. And maybe he was Aquarius. No, Peter's the Aquarius. Because Aquariuses have a really good ability to learn things. Anyway, so Davy, how did it feel when you could not be a jockey anymore? He said that I told myself I'd come back to it later. I could always come back to it. And he did. He did come back to it several different times. And also he said maybe it saved me from breaking my neck. So it was good. He said it was a relief that I didn't have to worry about that. And shoveling horse shite, he says. I went from that to much more glamorous situations, although Broadway was sweaty, dirty business, makeup, sweat, being exhausted, traveling, everyone shoved together on a plane or a bus, and backstage. And what did he think of being in the Monkees? It was just another step in my career. I didn't think much of it when it happened. It was just a step toward a bigger career. I was thinking of the future. I was actually just thinking of right then, but I was also thinking of how to make money, and that America sounded good, that he could be in America, and he really wanted to be in America because England was cold and dark and his father had consumption, and he didn't want to end up like that. And he figured, and again, America would save his life because he was a little guy. And so America was sunny and beautiful, and the women were amazing. And although there's nothing wrong with British women, but he just felt like America was a place to be. And there's that Leo again. Now what else did you like? He said the monkeys became a much bigger part of my life after they were over, ironically. When we were in it, it was like a hurricane. We were always in a state of, because it was the 60s, getting high or just joking around. We just constantly joked around, of course, learning lines, learning music, recording, promotion, etc. And then after it was over, it was like, oh my God, what just happened? That was big. That was a big thing. Because nobody would stop talking about it, because forevermore I was always Davy the monkey, Davy the monkey. And then it was sort of shameful in a way, but he said, but I didn't feel shame. I felt a great honor and a great brotherhood with the other members. And Mickey and I had a great friendship in particular, and stuck together because we were both more of the performers of the four. And then Mike and Peter were direct opposites. So, of course, Mickey and I were much more similar, and we could hang better, and we were like brothers. Mickey is my brother. They're all my brothers. Ironically, then, because he didn't have brothers. That's the thing. I didn't have brothers. They became my brothers. I had my sisters. I love my sisters, but they were my brothers. And so how do you feel about the world right now? Well, to put it lightly, it's a drag. And it does feel like nobody learned anything, but we also see here on the other side that it's a very confusing, it's almost like a veil is over a lot of people, and they're not even consciously making decisions and not even consciously choosing their words and actions. It is almost like a tidal wave of an obsession. And so if you can just keep chipping away at that veil, the veil that has taken over humanity, and keep chipping away at it with truth, with humor, with positivity. I know it's hard, but you guys have to keep staying in there and staying positive. Music helps. Creativity helps. I always felt that being peaceful, that being kind to others and making people laugh was an act of peace. That was a revolutionary act. I feel like the humor that we had, and we all had it in the band, we all had it, was our greatest gift, even more than the music. And that we actually changed a lot of people through our humor. At the end of the day, we're all just humans. We're all just here getting through it. And you might as well laugh once in a while, or a lot, and not take it too seriously. So how are things? So Mike Nesmith passed. Do you guys all hang out with him? You, Peter, Mike? Of course we do. Mike's me buddy. He's not as serious over here as he was on the other side. Mike's actually was funnier than anyone. He just had a different sense of humor. Some people didn't understand it, but he was very funny, and he's still funny. And Peter's the one that sometimes you want to kick him in the pants, and we do. No, we love each other. We're brothers. We're all brothers here. We're still a band. And that's about it. I think that's about it. I haven't channeled in a long time, so I'm kind of rusty on that, but I wanted to bring Davy in. Is there any last thing that Davy Jones would like to say to the people listening? If you are authentic, no matter what you do, if you do it with truth, with your heart, and you're authentic, that makes the world a much happier place. So just, yeah, that's about it. I feel him pulling away. I think that's it. I'm just going to leave it at that. And thanks for listening, you guys. Take care. Bye. And thank you, Davy.